Before we get started, guys, I actually, last night I added this in because we all know there's some really intense stuff that happened in Paris last night. So I'd like everyone to join me for a moment of silence for the victims and the families from the Paris issues. All right, thank you. Before we get started, I wanted to say a special thanks to the guys from Innov8. A lot of work went into this summit, and I can tell you, I saw a lot of it firsthand with the volunteers, but Pete in the back has put in just countless hours, and he's basically a missionary to the Innov8 world. So you guys help me to show them our appreciation. Is my mic okay? Everybody can hear? We're good? Okay, great. I don't hear well, so just let me know if I need to turn it down. Before I get started, I just wanted to go over a couple different jobs that we each have. Obviously, mine is to talk, yours is to listen. The challenge for me will to finish my job before you finish your job. And so, I just want to take a second, talk a little bit about what today is about as far as for myself. This is really 7+ years in the making, this idea of the art of why. This concept that we're going to talk about today is nothing new. It's a very old concept. It's something that I've just discovered over the last 7+ years in my own life that not only helped me grow my business and create a great business, but actually find a deeper level of happiness, joy, and freedom in my own life in every aspect of it. One of the things that we're going to talk about today is several stories from people that have come before us. That was one of the neat things about writing a book. I've been working on it for a little over 10 months, and I got to learn a lot about people that perfected or mastered their why well before I did. The why in each one of our lives is a little bit different and the same. We're going to talk a little bit more as we go about that. But ultimately, what your why is your purpose. When I started the process of writing the book, it was actually supposed to be a book about success. But when I really started digging deep and getting honest about it, I realized that I needed to make it about something much more important in my own life, and which really got me to where I am today, and that is having purpose in what I do. And not just in business, but in my entire life. One of the things, stories I wanted to tell you guys about first is actually somebody who knew about mastering this why long before I did, or even considered it. Let me share one of these stories about a young man. He was an innovator through and through. He barely went to school. He was actually deaf for most of his childhood. And he actually was not the sharpest knife in the drawer. But he had an idea for something that he believed could change the world. So he set out to do that. Lo and behold, someone beat him to the punch. So did he give up? No. He pushed on. He kept going and decided he wanted to make the man who had already made the product he wanted even better. But he failed. He failed over and over and over again. But every time he fell, he got back up. What really made him a success was why he got back up. This man was clear about his purpose. And when you fail over 10,000 times, which he did, you get a lot of practice on mastering the art of your why. But what if he hadn't mastered it? What if he tried, failed, and moved on? Would you have given up after failing maybe the 4th time? What about the 500th, the 700th, or the 950th? What if he said, why the hell am I doing all this? And he couldn't answer that. What would the world be like if he gave up? This should give you an idea. You see, Thomas Edison didn't invent the light bulb. He invented the affordable light bulb. He said, we will make light so cheap, only the rich can burn candles. He mastered the art of his why so well that he lit up the entire world. And if he hadn't, perhaps we'd still be in the dark. So what is your light bulb? How do you get power to it? That's what our talk is about today. In the book, we created 10 steps. The 10 steps were designed to help people find their purpose and master it. Step 1 is actually more of a question than a statement. It's a question that so many times we forget to ask ourselves because we're so busy trying to survive. Trying to survive asking questions like who, what, when, where, and how, which are all the questions we have to ask every day. But so many times we forget to ask the most important question, and that's why are you here? Today we're going to actually go through a couple different exercises, and you guys are going to have some time to do some writing. We left some things on your chairs. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about 3 entrepreneurs who had something very unique in common. The first wanted to spark creativity and awaken the child in every person on the planet. The second wanted to get a package from point A to point B and wanted to do it faster than anybody else. The third learned to sew in the orphanage she grew up in and wanted to use that talent to revolutionize the fashion industry. These innovators weren't sheep, but the world is full of sheep. Flocks of people following the pack. They're walking around with no idea of why or where they want to end up. I know this because I used to be one of those sheep. I was following other people's purpose instead of my own, and my motives were shallow and self-centered. You have to find your own why. Washington Irving said, "Great minds have purpose, and others have wishes." Asking yourself why you are here gives your journey purpose, and it takes the wishes you have for your life and gives them meaning. Of course, people may have vague descriptions. They may say, I want to be happy. I want to be successful. I want to be healthy. But few people stop to ask why. And even fewer stick with the question long enough to find out the answer. Now, I want everyone to reach underneath your chair. You've got an envelope. It says, do not open, but you can actually open it now. You can open it in advance. Inside this envelope are some clues to the entrepreneurs that I'm talking about. My mom is nodding. She knows she gave me this type of idea. Super crafty. Go mom. Did anyone guess what the entrepreneurs were or who they were? Walt Disney? You can smell the little white one. Okay, good. And how he knows who Coco Chanel is, that's a different story. That's for after the talk. And then, of course, the third one is Fred Smith.
I didn't have to include.
Guys, I said many people never stop to ask why, and fewer stick with it. But those who find their why and keep it create Mickey Mouse, overnight shipping companies, and Chanel No. 5. Before we get started on mastering our why, you've got to figure out what your why is and determine what mastering it looks like for you. For the sake of this talk and the exercise, you can focus on a key area in your life or career. You can focus on a goal you're trying to achieve, or you can jump right in and start working on your why. Let's go ahead and take out the paper that you have. We've got an area for step 1. You can use the either your notepad or the FedEx envelope to write on. I want you guys to think about the different areas where you feel like your why is maybe lacking. You maybe don't have enough purpose in these areas. And that's something that we're going to talk more and more about, and that in the book I talk a lot about, and that's this idea of a compartmentalized life. Some of you guys know what I'm talking about. You're one person at work, you're one person at church, you're one person at the gym, you're one person at home, you're one person with your kids, and you have all these different types of yourself. And maybe there's an area in your life where you're missing some of that purpose. So you can use these as ideas, but I want you guys to all close your eyes for a minute. Just humor me on this. Close your eyes and picture your life a year from now. Picture your life once you've reached your goal. What is happening? How have things improved? What are the benefits of sticking with it when things get tough? You are living the life of your dreams, perhaps. And perhaps your career and home life is going great. Now open your eyes. What did you see? If you're a business owner and maybe your goal was to expand, Perhaps you saw your new office or pictured yourself hiring new people. If your goal is to get healthy, perhaps you saw yourself running a race or working out in the gym. If you focused on your life, perhaps you want to go back to school so you can teach. But whatever your task, the most important thing is to ask why. Why do you want your business to expand? Why do you want to get healthy? Why do you want to go back to school? You really have to dig deep to answer these questions. To the business owner, maybe you want to make more money. Why? Perhaps you want to provide more for your family. Why? So you can send your kids to college. Why? So they can have a better chance in what will likely be a better competitive job market in the future? Why? Maybe it's so you'll know they can take care of themselves and you can retire with a peace of mind knowing you can take care of your family. To the person who wants to go back to school, I ask why. So you can get a higher degree? Why? So you can go back and teach? Why? So you can help inner city elementary school kids learn to read? Why? Maybe it's because you believe everybody has a right to a great education, and your purpose in life is to offer that to as many people as you can. Or maybe it's because you know the student you teach today could grow up to be the leader of tomorrow, and you believe each child you come in contact with could be the next person to make a world a better place. Whatever the task and whatever the goal, the most important thing is that you start with the right questions first, and that is, why are you here? We're going to take 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to let you guys kind of take a minute. I want you to write on the papers we gave you. You don't have to have the answer to this question right now, but I just want to take a couple minutes so that we can consider it before we move on to our next step. Does anybody need a pen? back to those in a little bit, and you guys won't have to go around the room and read yours, so feel free to be honest. You know, unless you're sitting next to someone you can't be honest with. You can revisit that later. You know, guys, the first thing that we talked about was this idea of asking why first. And that really is the foundation of what I believe is a life that is complete and a life that is truly, truly fulfilling. But there's a lot of steps that happen after that. Just knowing your purpose is not enough. You've got to master it, and you've got to bring reality into the picture. So that's what brings us to our next step. This is actually, truth be told, my least favorite step, because I like to stay in the vision and dream world as long as I can. And that's not really what it takes to be super successful. There comes a time when each one of us has to decide what we're willing to pay and what cost we're willing to take in order to master our why. So the next thing that we want to talk about is counting the cost. And the thing about counting the cost that's so important is that this is the part where we do have to actually stop and ask, okay, how are we going to do it? How much is it going to cost? How are we going to get there? Who's coming with us? You know, those types of questions. And you'll continually revisit these first 3 steps of the 10 steps as you go, because you've got to kind of come back to them and refine. The thing about the second step is that you just have to give it a best effort. As long as you're clear on the first step, the other steps don't have to be perfect. But the second step, you want to give it your best effort, knowing that you don't really know all the costs. So what we try and do is figure out how much of the cost do we know. You know, I know that one person said it great, and that was that, well, I guess he said it good too. There are some people who live in a dream world, and there are some who face reality. And then there are those who turn one into the other. I love this quote because I think that is the secret of everything that we're talking about today. But in order to do that, we've got to go to the other quote, which is Benjamin Franklin. And he said something you guys have heard from your parents growing up. By failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. Or something like that. I think it was something that was planned. But nonetheless, the important thing is that we recognize that we've got to have a plan. We can't just decide we've got a new purpose and then just run out the door, because there's a lot of things involved. There's a cost involved. There's people involved. So I like to think of it similar to if I'm going to go on a road trip. Let's say I want to take a trip. I've got to go from New York to California. Well, I know that, you know, that generally I want to go west. But if I don't have a mode of transportation or GPS, or I don't plan that trip's probably not going to go too well, especially if I set out on foot. Chances are I probably won't make it. And if I do, it'll be way too long and grueling. When most of us in the room plan a trip, it's usually planned down to just about every aspect of it. Like a 1-week vacation, maybe we plan obviously the flight. And then we plan where we're going to stay, where we're going to eat. Maybe we plan for shows that we're going to go to, or museums that we'll visit. We even plan down to the temperature to make sure we bring an umbrella and all the different things that go into this 1-week vacation. And yet so many of us don't even put that much planning into our own lives. And that's really what step 2 is about. It's about planning for the trip of your life and making sure that you don't leave it out and you have a plan, but also that you're willing to pay the cost that comes with it. There's actually an excerpt from the book that I'd like to read to you guys that's about my own life, and really comes from the first time that I had to work this step, and where I really had to start giving something up of myself in order to have the life that I wanted. So I'm going to read that to you now. The house was empty, the kind of vacant that scares a grown man. And that day, it seemed there was an actual sound of silence. All I could hear was the creak of the floor and the dust rearranging itself when the heater kicked on. There was no doubt I was all alone. And I could not for the life of me understand why. I had been on top of the world, making more money than I could spend. I was living fast and free and enjoying every single minute of it. And it was so easy. I had found a way to compartmentalize every part of my life. I was a loving husband, I was a brilliant businessman, and a great boss. I had no shortage of friends, and life was good. So what had gone wrong? What was I doing alone, broke, and afraid? It turns out the truth really does hurt, especially when it meant admitting I was a terrible husband and a lousy businessman. The only friends I had were simply there to share my drugs and feed the lies I was telling myself. That day alone in the house was my bottom, the end of myself. It took my wife leaving me to realize just how lost I was. And for all my efforts to be powerful, great, and important, I had nothing to show for it. They say the darkest hour is before the dawn. I believe the darkest time is before you find out why you were here. It took a cold, hard slap of reality for me to finally realize I needed a better way of life. I had to admit I wasn't where I wanted to be. I found myself wondering, why am I here? In other words, what is my true purpose for life? One of the hardest things about that day in the house was that I knew I was defeated. I knew that I was going to have to give up a lot in order to get serious about where I was in life. In fact, some of the people in this room don't know that story, and they work for me at Edison. And at the time, I had a completely different company. I was in the mortgage and real estate business. And conveniently enough, it was the beginning of the mortgage crisis. For me, the cost to really take a look and get my life back was sobriety. I had to admit to myself that I had to give something up in order to get back my life and my wife and to pursue what I knew I was supposed to be doing, but had somehow lost my way. Today I stand here with 7.5 years sobriety and so much more. My wife came back, as some of you guys know. She's not my second one. And I have 2 beautiful children, which you also know. And so much was I able to get from giving that up. But I had to come to the end of myself and realize that my life is not about me. And that was a major, major turning point for me. And I truly believe that for some of the people in this room, you may be at a similar turning point. But maybe not ready to admit how much you've got to let go. The truth is, to get where you want to go, to find your purpose and master it, and to really get to that place where you're happy, you're joyous, and you're free, that something has to go. It's going to cost you. As I read this, this is part of my why. Part of my why that I've learned through this process is to help others. That is the ultimate why that I'm here. It is the one thing that I've discovered that if I make my life about, I find ultimate fulfillment and happiness. And the other things that I thought I needed to chase, like money and power, prestige, none of that matters. And all of that is a byproduct. So today, I want us to look into what it's going to cost you guys. Because it's going to cost something. If you want to go to that next place, it's going to cost something. So I want to take some time, and again, we're going to get our papers out again. We're going to go to the next step 2 area. And really look at what it's going to take. For the business owner, you may have to be away from your family while you expand. You may have to hire more employees. You may have to hire and spend money, and that might be risky and scary for you. Perhaps your goal is to find love. A cost comes with that. You want to be healthy. Whatever your why is, take a look at what it's going to cost. Because when we get to step 3, we're going to have a decision to make. And that decision is, does the why outweigh the cost? And if it doesn't, that's okay. That means that your why is probably not strong enough. And you can go back to step 1. So guys, let's take another 2-3 minutes. I want you all to just kind of take some time, do some soul searching, and jot down what you think it might cost you to get to that why. guys are kind of wrapping it up, we'll go ahead and keep moving. Again, we're going to be revisiting this question, and a lot of this stuff goes into a lot more detail in the book, which I plan to give to each one of you guys. So, you know, one of the things that as we move forward, we've really got to come to a place where the real crossroads happens. And for me, that was step 3. Step 3 is when I realized that I needed to commit to what I was doing and believe with enough conviction that I could do it. Henry Ford, I think, said it best: whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. I love this quote because it is so profoundly true in every one of our lives. And it really does many times come down to how much we believe if we can or can't. One of the people I actually had done a story on that before the book I didn't know about. I want to read a little bit about this marathon runner. He's not your typical marathon runner because he didn't win a gold medal, but he's actually one of the most famous marathon runners of all time. And it's actually from 1968 Olympics. A marathon runner from Tanzania, John Stephen Akwari, was one of the greatest losers of all time. He represented his country in the 1968 Olympics and had dreams of feeling a medal being placed around his neck. But after the race started, it wasn't long before he lagged behind. After 18.5 miles, he collapsed. His legs were injured, and the Olympic officials urged him to quit. He refused. Over an hour after the winner was announced, all the others had finished the race, and most of the spectators had gone home. Akwari made it across the finish line and collapsed. When he was asked later by a reporter why he continued to run, he said this: "My country did not send me to start the race, they sent me to finish." That is a true definition of commitment. And that's why I think it's so important to take step 3 seriously. If there is no shame in working longer on step 1, and keep in mind, these steps are not necessarily meant to be worked in a day, but it's okay if you don't have the commitment level to go back and work on what is my why, what is my purpose. Another interesting study that we uncovered during the research for the book was a professor named Ellen Langer. She's a professor of psychology at Harvard, having in 1981 become the first woman to be tenured in psychology at Harvard. She conducted a very interesting study that involved hotel room attendants. Many hotel workers believe they do not get regular exercise, and others feel they don't exercise at all. When in reality, a hotel room attendant cleans an average of 15 rooms per day, which each room takes 20 to 30 minutes to complete. The physical activity involved exceeds the Surgeon General's recommendation of at least 30 minutes of physical exercise per day. So Ellen Langer teamed up with Aaliyah Crum, assistant professor at the Stanford Mind and Body Lab. They took 2 different groups of these workers. In the first group, the women were told that they were getting the right amount of exercise. In the second group, the control group, they kept that a secret. The workers in the first group lost weight. Their body fat percentages, waist to hip ratios, and systolic blood pressures dropped. People in the control group showed no such improvement. Keep in mind the hotel attendants that were working, they worked the exact same amount of time. The difference is one group believed and the other did not. It's amazing what our mind and body are capable of doing if you believe in yourself. But you have to take control of those thoughts. You have to stop any negative self-talk and let go of the past so that you can move forward. Akwari ran in the Olympics to honor his country, and nothing was going to stop him from finishing that race. The pain and the struggle was worth it to him. But he had to commit to finishing, and better yet, he had to believe he could do it. There is no way he'd have finished if he said, "There is no way I'm ever going to finish this." Your commitment to mastering your why is the most important thing that keeps you accountable to getting to the finish line. And everyone knows that obstacles today will try to stop you. Interruptions to your schedule, having to shelf priorities, simple time constraints, stress and doubt, all conspire to prevent you from seeing the finish line. But if you're going to succeed and master the art of your why, you're going to have to give up on the phrase, I can't. So I'm actually going to ask for a volunteer for this next part. This is the first time I've done this exercise, so just bear with me. If it doesn't work, we'll try another one next time. So if somebody come up. Yeah. So what we're going to do, and if you want to just turn around and face the audience, put your left arm out. I'm going to push on her arm, and I want you to push back, okay?
Okay.
All right. Now, tell us something that you can't do.
I cannot speak French.
Okay, put your arm back out. You're going to say, I can't speak French while I try and push down on your arm, okay?
Okay. I can't speak French.
All right, now put it back up.
Okay.
Now I want you to say the same thing, only this time I want you to say, I can speak French.
I can speak French.
All right, thank you. Give her a hand. Hopefully it worked. I know her though, she's probably something out. But the point of the exercise is how powerful the mind and the body are. The arm has a hard time staying up because it can't hold itself up and keep the lie up. And that's what a lot of this is about believing a lie. Many of us go through different things in our life that have caused us to believe less in ourselves, have made us think that we can't commit, and ultimately what has helped me in the past so much, and I think will continue to help others, is this idea that if I'm willing to believe in myself, even though I might not believe that much, you have what it takes to take the first step. And that's what step 3 really, truly is about, is getting to a place where you're ready to commit and believe. So we're going to do a little more exercises, guys. So on this next slide, I want you to be thinking about your goals again, but this time I want you to be more specific. Make sure that it's measurable, that it has a time limit, and that it's yours. What you don't want to say is just that I want to get healthy. Let's look at what would I have to do, what specifically would make it yours in order to do that. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes. For example, if you want to lose weight, you need to put that I want to lose 10 pounds in 60 days. One of the most important components, though, is that it's yours. Make sure that this is yours 100%. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to write that down, because writing down the goals is proven to show that that's where a lot of the commitment comes from. If you've got it written down, the chances of you staying committed to it are much higher. We're not going to get into step 4, but it's fairly simple. Step 4 is start. Okay, guys? And that's where the real work begins, is after you've built this foundation and you've looked at all the different aspects of what it's going to take to get there and why you're going, then you just have to start. I encourage you guys to read the rest of the steps as we leave from here. But you know, one of the things that I really think is great about this whole concept of why, and I'm going to skip ahead for a second to step 10. And I wasn't planning on talking too much about step 10, but I feel like it's really important to give you guys a little bit of a view of what really this whole thing's about. One of the guys in Bill was asking me, why are you always smiling? And he asked me that at the food truck. He said, come to the talk and you'll find out why. Hopefully you will, I don't know. You might not find out until later, but the truth is the reason why I'm always smiling, as Bill says, is because I've really embraced this concept. And the concept is that once I got to the end of this journey for myself, and I've built a business, I built a couple of businesses, and I've made a family, and I've got great kids, and I've got all these different things, and I've got things. But in the end, what really, really made me happy was none of those things, per se. Now, my wife and my children make me happy, so I don't want you to get that wrong. But they make me happy for a specific reason. And it's not because they do what I say, and it's not because they're always obedient. It's because they're not me. And that is the secret to this entire concept of why. Is that in the end, I realized it's not about me. And now today, I've made my entire life about that. And it's been a slow process, and it's a one day at a time process to try and work that into every aspect. Because you could say, well, you're the boss, it's all about you, right? At work. And if some of the employees are in here, they're like, yeah, it's all about you. But what I learned, and I've actually learned this in a couple different ways. I learned it from being sober and through the 12 steps. I've learned it from the gospel. And I've actually learned it from Inc. 5000. Some of you guys know we've actually had a couple of awards up for the company for being the fastest growing company in this country. And that actually taught me a lot more than I thought. When I got to Inc. 5000 for the first time last year, I was expecting it to just be like a high five celebration. You made it, you're the man, congratulations. And really it was something very different. In fact, it was very challenging for me. And the reason why it was challenging was because everything they were saying about going from being good to being great was about other people. It was about your stakeholders. It was about your employees. It was about the community. So even there, I couldn't get away from this concept. I put up here, this, for those of you who are not electrical engineers, this is a type of capacitor. Okay? Who in here knows what a capacitor's function is? Okay, go ahead, engineer.
No, you go ahead.
No.
It stores energy and then it releases it all at once.
Gotcha. Would you agree that it slows the energy down?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, thank you. The capacitor's main role is to regulate energy and to first and foremost slow it down or stop it. Well, what I've come to realize is that we're all wired the same way. Each one of us is like a capacitor. Our nature is to take and to hold on to things. So when something comes our way, maybe it's money, maybe it's an opportunity, maybe it's a relationship, our first natural instinct is to take and to put that energy inside. And what I've come to realize is that if all of us are capacitors and we're on a wire board or a motherboard, energy is trying to flow, and the energy is agnostic. It's 110 volts. It just wants to flow. It doesn't have a thought behind it. It just wants to flow, and the capacitors are stopping it. But what if there wasn't a capacitor? What if the capacitor was removed? All the energy could flow through it. And what I've come to realize is that we, like the capacitors, when we remove ourselves from any situation and make it not about us, the power flows through. And that is really, truly what I've come to understand about this process is that in every scenario that I can possibly make it not about me, more power flows through. And more energy flows through. And so that's why my whole life has become about getting out of the way. Some of you guys have heard me say this concept of pushing the river. It's the same concept. When you feel like you're just constantly pushing, you're constantly fighting, it's because you need to stop pushing the river and turn around and just let the river take you. And it's the same thing with this energy, and it's the same thing with life, and it is true for every single person in this room. So as I leave you guys today, I want you to think about that. And I want you to think about, in your life as you go, how can I help others? Because there's always someone right there next to you that you can help. For me, it started out with alcoholics. And then it moved to something else. And then it was children. And then it was family. And today it's everyone. And I know that probably sounds crazy, but it is a true thing. And the neat thing about this community, and probably some of the people in this room, is you already know about this. You already know it. You just might not be practicing it because of life, because of things that stop you from doing it. And so as we close today, I want to encourage you guys to think about your whys and to make sure that your why isn't too shallow. Make sure that your why is deep enough and includes someone other than yourself. Because that is the secret to true happiness, joy, and freedom, which has nothing to do with money, and has nothing to do with business, and has nothing to do with prestige. It just has everything to do with life. So, as we close, I want you guys to do one more thing for me. I want you to reach underneath your chair, and I want you to feel underneath there's something that we left for you guys. This is Theo for a moment. No, not that. Reach underneath again. If you came in late, it's not the FedEx envelope. So this is a jump drive for each one of you guys. It has a copy of the book. And it's for you to keep. It's a free copy of the book. We wanted to give you guys hard copies, but the printing was delayed. So we went to the over model. Thank you guys so much for attending today. I really appreciate it.